The placement of the Waldemath moon, often referred to as the dark moon or the Lilith that isn't the black moon Lilith, in the second house of a natal chart creates a complex psychological landscape regarding value, security, and the material world. Unlike the lunar energy we are familiar with, which reflects and nurtures, the Waldemath moon represents a more chaotic, shadowy, and primal frequency. When this energy settles into the house of possessions and self-worth, the native often experiences a profound tug-of-war between the physical world and an unquenchable, subconscious hunger. The nature of the Waldemath shadow. To understand this placement, one must first recognize what the Waldemath moon represents. It is considered a second, non-luminous satellite of Earth, a dust cloud or a dark twin. In astrology, it symbolizes the parts of our psyche that are unrefined, obsessive, and fiercely independent. It is where we refuse to compromise. In the second house, these themes manifest through the lens of ownership, personal resources, and the fundamental sense of I have. The paradox of material security. The second house is traditionally the domain of Taurus, stable, grounded, and focused on the five senses. Placing the Waldemath moon here introduces an element of unpredictability. The native may find that their relationship with money and objects is never truly settled. There is often an underlying anxiety that no matter how much is accumulated, it is never enough to fill a specific, internal void. This isn't necessarily greed in the traditional sense, rather, it is a primal need to use material things as an anchor against a psychic storm. The native might fluctuate between extremes of hoarding and total renunciation. At times, they may feel that their possessions define their very existence, leading to an intense, almost magnetic attachment to certain objects. At other times, a rebellious streak, characteristic of the dark moon, might cause them to sabotage their own financial stability as a way to prove they cannot be controlled by the system or by material needs. Self-worth and the invisible wound. The most profound impact of the Waldemath moon in the second house is on the native's self-esteem. The second house tells us how we value ourselves. With this dark lunar influence, self-worth is often tied to things that are hidden or taboo. The native may feel they only have value if they possess something unique, secret, or powerful. There is a tendency to feel like an outsider in the world of commerce and traditional worth. This placement suggests that the native's sense of value was perhaps undermined or shadowed in early life. They may have been made to feel that their needs were too much or that their way of valuing things was somehow wrong. As an adult, this translates into a fierce protection of their resources. They don't just want a bank account, they want a fortress. However, the lesson of the Waldemath moon is that the fortress is often built of shadows. True security for these individuals comes only when they stop trying to find it in the external world and start recognizing the inherent power of their own darker, more primal instincts. Sensuality and the body. Beyond finances, the second house governs our relationship with our physical bodies and sensory experiences. The Waldemath moon here can create a very intense, almost carnal connection to the physical realm. The native may have unconventional tastes or find comfort in sensory experiences that others find overwhelming or strange. There is a deep, earthy wisdom here, but it is often tinged with a sense of shame that must be integrated. Learning to inhabit the body without judgment is a major life theme. The path to integration. For the individual with Waldemath in the second house, the path to peace involves acknowledging the hunger. By recognizing that their drive for security is actually a drive for sovereignty, they can shift from being controlled by financial anxiety to being masters of their own resourcefulness. They often find success in shadow industries, work involving psychology, deep research, hidden assets, or the transformation of waste into value. Ultimately, the dark moon here demands that the native defines value on their own terms. It asks them to find the gold in the parts of themselves they were taught to hide. When they stop viewing their material needs through the lens of fear and start seeing them as a tool for personal liberation, the Waldemath moon transforms from a source of instability into a wellspring of profound, unshakable self-reliance. The transit of the Waldemath moon, the dark moon, through the natal second house is a period characterized by a profound, often unsettling re-evaluation of what it means to possess and be possessed. Because the Waldemath moon represents a more primal, unrefined, and shadowed lunar frequency than the traditional moon, its journey through the house of resources and self-worth acts as a subterranean earthquake. It shakes the foundations of one's material security to reveal the hidden psychological motivations beneath our relationship with the physical world. The stirring of material hunger. When Waldemath enters the second house, the individual often experiences a sudden, inexplicable surge in hunger. This is rarely a simple desire for more money, rather, it is a psychic hunger for autonomy and power through material means. You may find yourself obsessing over financial independence or feeling an intense, almost irrational fear of being controlled by your debts, your employer, or the economic system at large. This transit often highlights where we have compromised our integrity for the sake of comfort. The Waldemath energy is fiercely uncompromising, and as it moves through the house of values, it exposes the price tag we have placed on our souls. If you have stayed in a soul-crushing job for the paycheck, or remained in a relationship for the financial stability, this transit will make that compromise feel unbearable. The dark moon demands a return to a more authentic, albeit raw, state of self-reliance. The shadow side of possessions. During this transit, your relationship with physical objects may undergo a strange transformation. You might feel a sudden urge to purge your belongings, sensing that your stuff is actually a collection of energetic anchors holding you back. Conversely, you might find yourself magnetically drawn to specific objects that feel like talismans or symbols of a hidden power. There is a risk here of shadow spending, using financial resources to mask deep-seated insecurities or to exert control over others. Because Waldemath represents the parts of us that are not socially civilized, you might find yourself making impulsive financial decisions that reflect a rebellious or self-sabotaging streak. The lesson of this period is to observe these impulses without necessarily acting on them, recognizing that the void you are trying to fill with a purchase is actually a spiritual or psychological gap that requires inner work rather than outer acquisition. Re-evaluating self-worth. Perhaps the most significant impact of Waldemath transiting the second house is the radical shift in self-esteem. The second house is the mirror in which we see our own value. Waldemath acts as a dark mirror, showing us the parts of our value system that are based on shadow, shame, or the need for external validation. You may experience a crisis of value where your traditional skills or achievements suddenly feel hollow. This is a deliberate deconstruction. The transit is stripping away the superficial layers of net worth to help you discover your true worth. It asks, who are you when you have nothing? What remains of your value when the bank account is low or the status symbols are gone? While this can be a period of intense vulnerability, it is also the time when an individual can develop a type of self-confidence that is bulletproof because it no longer depends on the shifting sands of the material world. Navigating the body and the senses. As the second house also governs the physical body and sensory input, a Waldemath transit can bring about a heightened, almost visceral sensitivity. You may become hyper-aware of how your physical environment affects your mood. The dark moon influence can manifest as a need for more primal or unfiltered sensory experiences, seeking out nature in its rawest forms, changing your diet to something more ancestral, or experiencing a shift in your physical boundaries. It is common during this time to feel a certain body dysmorphia of the soul, where you feel disconnected from the physical realm or, conversely, trapped by it. The key to navigating this is grounding. Engaging in tactile, earthy activities, gardening, pottery, or deep tissue work, can help channel the erratic Waldemath energy into a constructive physical form. The outcome, sovereign resourcefulness. By the time the Waldemath moon leaves the second house, the native has usually undergone a trial by fire regarding their security. The goal of this transit is not to leave you destitute, but to leave you sovereign. You emerge with a much sharper understanding of what you actually need versus what you were told you should want. This transit often leaves behind a newfound ability to manifest resources in unconventional ways. You stop looking for safety and start looking for power. When you integrate the Waldemath shadow into your second house, You no longer fear the loss of possessions, because you have realized that your greatest resource is your own unshakable, primal will to survive and thrive on your own terms. How do you currently feel about your financial independence? Knowing whether you feel trapped or empowered by your current resources can help pinpoint exactly where this Waldemath energy is trying to do its work. Subscribe, like, and share.